Hello and welcome back to the Bible Difficulties and Answers podcast. I'm your host, Lance Smith, and today we're diving into a fascinating and highly debated topic from Genesis 21, verses 32 and 34. Did the Bible mistakenly place the Philistines in Palestine at the time of Abraham? There's a lot to cover, so let me set the stage by reading these verses from the New Living Translation. After making their covenant at Beersheba, Abimelech left with Phicol, the commander of his army, and they returned home to the land of the Philistines. And Abraham lived as a foreigner in Philistine country for a long time. Now, here's the dilemma. The earliest archaeological evidence of the Philistines dates back to around 1200 BC. Yet, these verses place them in the time of Abraham some 800 years earlier. Is this a historical error in the Bible? Did the author of Genesis make a mistake? Or is there more to the story? In fact, atheists and skeptics often point to this passage as proof that the Bible is historically inaccurate. But what if the answer isn't as simple as it seems? Could it be that the Bible is referencing a different group of people, or that our understanding of the Philistines needs refinement? Today, we're going to explore these questions head on. We'll examine the historical context, archaeological evidence, and insights of scholars like Christopher Eames. By the end of this episode, you'll not only understand why this question matters, but also why the Bible's account of the Philistines might be more accurate than we think. Let's start by outlining the issue as noted in the Big Book of Bible Difficulties, where they write, "The earliest allusion to the Philistines in Egyptian or Palestine sources is from the 12th century BC, yet these verses place them in the area some 800 years earlier." Now, as we covered last week, atheists view this issue as evidence of the Bible's historical inaccuracy. And in all honesty, it would appear so. But maybe it's more of a complex historical question that requires further research and interpretation. Let's begin today with a solution from the Big Book of Bible Difficulties, where they write this. This is not the first time critics have come to false conclusions based on the general lack of historical knowledge concerning this period. Sodom and Gomorrah are examples of cities the Bible mentioned that were supposedly not historical. When the Ebla tablets were discovered, the charge of myth was refuted. These tablets contain references to both cities. It may just be a matter of time before similar evidence turns up to confirm the biblical testimony here regarding the Philistines. Until then, we can rest assured that the biblical record is accurate in this case, having confidence in the Scriptures based on its past record of trustworthiness. Furthermore, the critic's argument is the traditional fallacious argument from ignorance. Simply because we lack the evidence from extra-biblical sources of the earlier date of the Philistines does not mean they didn't exist then. It simply means we lack the information. All right, first, there is a mention here of the Ebla tablets in solving the issue of Sodom and Gomorrah. What are the Ebla tablets? The Ebla tablets are a remarkable archaeological discovery consisting of approximately 1,800 complete clay tablets, 4,700 fragments, and thousands of minor chips found in the royal archives of the ancient city of Ebla in Syria. Discovered in 1974 and 75 by Italian archaeologists, these tablets date back to around 2500 to 2250 BC and provide a wealth of information about the ancient Near East. It was written in both Sumerian and a previously unknown Semitic language called Eblite. So the Bible has a track record of being vindicated by new discoveries, as we just covered in Sodom and Gomorrah. Critics dismissed them as mythical until the discovery of the Ebla tablets, which mentioned both cities. So, is it possible we simply lack archaeological evidence of the earlier Philistines? In this case, the Big Book of Bible Difficulties suggests we should wait for further discoveries. Well, in the meantime, we can rest assured that the Bible has proven trustworthy over time. Skeptics often argue from ignorance, assuming that the absence of evidence is the evidence of absence, which isn't always the case. Now, until that evidence is found, though, we still have quite a conundrum here. The Bible places the Philistines in Palestine more or less 800 years before the earliest archaeological evidence. The solution from the Big Book of Bible Difficulties is yes, that's true. but have faith as it will be revealed in God's time to be true. Nevertheless, the Bible's mention of the Philistines during Abraham's time has still been a hotly debated topic among scholars and archaeologists. However, due to time constraints, we're going to rely heavily on 2 articles by Christopher Eames, who has researched and published extensively on this part of the Bible. Let's break this down into 4 main areas for our discussion today. First, historical context. The Philistines are traditionally associated with the Sea Peoples, who invaded the eastern Mediterranean around 1200 BC. However, the Bible mentions Philistines in the time of Abraham, which is generally dated to around 1850 BC. The first article we'll explore today is very long and in-depth by Christopher Eames from February 24th, 2022, titled, "Are Philistines During Abraham's Time Evidenced Against Bible Historicity?" Now, there's so much here, so let me attempt to summarize. Christopher Eames offers an intriguing theory. He argues that there may have been 2 distinct groups referred to as Philistines, one during Abraham's time and another much later. According to Eames, the earlier Philistines may have been a Canaanite people, while the later Philistines were immigrants from the Mediterranean, possibly from Crete. He cites differences in their names, culture, and ruling structures, which suggests they were 2 separate groups. Interestingly, the Septuagint, that's the Greek translation of the Hebrew Bible, uses different terms for the Philistines in Abraham's time compared to those of later centuries, which supports this distinction. This theory offers a compelling solution to the apparent contradiction, suggesting that the term Philistine was used anachronistically, and that means belonging to a period other than that being portrayed, in later translations, but referred to different peoples across various time periods. To me, I think this is our clearest answer. A lot of our confusion comes from the Septuagint Bible translation that calls these earlier peoples Philistines when they were most likely Canaanite people. This really makes sense to me. So let's explore our second main area, and that is archaeological evidence. Archaeological findings have primarily placed the main Philistine civilization in the late 2nd millennium BC. Again, we're going to park here in the same article from Christopher Eames, Are Philistines During Abraham's Time Evidence Against Bible Historicity? And there's a couple of points. The first is Egyptian inscriptions, particularly those of Ramesses III, which is around 1200 BC, provide the earliest archaeological record of the Philistines, referring to them as Peliset. And the second point, DNA analysis of the Philistine graves at Ashkelon has confirmed a large migratory wave from the Greek Isles, notably Crete, around this time. All right, so the archaeological evidence still, to this day, matches what the Big Book of Bible Difficulties reported in their solution. We lack the archaeological evidence, but have faith it might one day appear. Okay, I hope so too. Until then, we have to solve this issue with what we know right now. The translation of the Septuagint may still be the most prominent explanation, as we just covered earlier. All right, our third area is the biblical perspective. The Bible presents a more complex picture. For this, we will summarize another lengthy article by Christopher Eames from March 26, 2017, titled, Uncovering the Bible's Buried Civilization, the Philistines. Now here in Genesis 20 and 21, we see Abraham interacting with Abimelech, king of the Philistines. This raises another question. Why would Abraham, a nomadic foreigner, live in peace among the Philistines if they were historically hostile toward Israel? Well, as we dig deeper into this article, we find that the relations between early Philistines and the Israelite forefathers were surprisingly peaceful. In Genesis 21, Abimelech acknowledges Abraham's divine favor and makes a covenant of peace with him. Even Isaac, Abraham's son, later lived among the Philistines during a famine, and we see that in Genesis 26, although tensions eventually grew due to Isaac's prosperity. Again, this suggests a distinction between the early and later Philistines. The Bible presents a nuanced account of these interactions, showing how relations evolved over time, eventually leading to the conflicts we read about in the time of Samson and David. So this passage highlights the initially peaceful relations between the earlier Philistines and Israelite patriarchs extending to Isaac's time. And hang tight, we're going to cover Isaac in next week's podcast. However, it notes that as Isaac grew wealthy and powerful, the Philistines became concerned, leading their king to request Isaac's departure from their land. Now, let's explore our fourth main area, and that's interpretations. So, how do we make sense of this? Christopher Eames presents several interpretations that could bridge the gap between the Bible and historical evidence. 1. Multiple migrations. There were likely multiple waves of Philistine migrations, with the earlier group present in Abraham's time. 2. Different population groups. The term Philistine might refer to different groups, one Canaanite, one Mediterranean. 3. Anachronistic usage. The term Philistine may have been applied retroactively to earlier peoples. And 4. Textual insights. The Septuagint uses different terms for the earlier and later Philistines, which might indicate that even ancient translators recognize this distinction. In closing, the debate over the Philistines in Abraham's time is far from settled. While traditional archaeology places the main Philistine civilization in the late 2nd millennium BC, scholars like Christopher Eames suggest that the Bible's use of the term Philistine reflects different groups across different periods. This view not only bridges the gap between the biblical and historical timelines, but also underscores the Bible's nuanced portrayal of ancient civilizations. As we continue to uncover more archaeological evidence, we may find the Bible's accuracy extends even further than we previously imagined. Next week, we'll tackle another challenging question. Why did God tell Abraham to sacrifice his son Isaac when God condemns human sacrifice in Leviticus? It's a deep dive into Genesis 22:2, and trust me, you won't want to miss it. Until then, remember, studying the Bible isn't just about finding all the answers, it's also about learning to ask the right questions. And together, we're uncovering these questions and answers one episode at a time. As always, we love hearing from our listeners. You may reach us at our website, BibleDifficultiesAndAnswers.podbean.com, or you may reach out to me directly at our email address, BibleDifficultiesAndAnswers@gmail.com, with any questions, comments, concerns, fits of righteous indignation, or just to say hi. I'm always glad to hear from our listeners. Also, please like and subscribe to this podcast. Tell a friend or two as well. And also, write a review and give it a 5-star rating on Apple Podcasts, Podbean, Spotify, YouTube, or any of your venues of choice. It really does help get the word out about the most amazing book ever written. Again, I'm Lance Smith. Until next time, I wish you good luck, good health, and God bless. So long, everybody.